How many of us focus more on worrying about what will go wrong than creating what we want to go right? How many of us
Yeah.
focus more often and with more passion sometimes on the things that upset us and disturb us and anger us and scare us instead of the things that bring us joy? How many of us are focusing on the obstacles rather than the breakthroughs? Whichever way you focus, what you focus on is what you create. So the first step in that controlling the controllable is to start to condition your mind.
Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, guys, you know this is one of my favorite spaces right here because I get an opportunity to welcome our guests because I know they're coming with a couple of things I deem very, very expensive. Time. 24 hours has been offered to everyone on this planet. What we do with that 24 hours, man, will tell me a lot about you. And so we want to thank Brian for coming because he's spending some of this stuff with us. And once spent, this commodity is spent. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful creator. It created him. It allowed him to experience some things that we want access to. It deposited some things precious, more precious than gold. And that is wisdom, knowledge, insight. We want to get into all of those good things. Why? Because we want to become better human spirits while we're here on this planet, man. We want to relate to self better. We want to relate to family better. And we want to relate to the world better. And so, Brian, I want to thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment, man.
Well, I am thrilled to be on your show. I love the work that you do and the heart that you do it with. So it's a pleasure and an honor, a privilege, and it's exciting. Let's rock and roll.
Definitely. One of the very first questions that I ask or level to the individual that shows up, as I mentioned before, we have this two-part journey, the independent journey, and then there is the interdependent journey, which ushers us into servanthood. My question to you is, how do you serve mankind?
Wow. Well, first of all, I love people. I believe that we have in us more than we ever dreamed of. My mentor was one of the greatest coaches of all time. His name was John Wooden, and he often said, there are no overachievers, which means we have within us the capacity to do things we didn't know we could do. So I love that I'm called America's breakthrough speaker because to me, the work that you do, the work that I do is about the same thing. It's helping people break through from fear to freedom, from failure to faith, from ego to ego, from good to great. And that it's in us. It's not something that we have to get from the outside. It's something that's in us, that's been given us. The greatest gift we're ever given is called today. And today we have a chance to do something that we've never done before. We have a chance to be kinder. We have a chance to be more courageous. We have a chance to make a difference in somebody else's life. You know, service is love in action. So my passion is to help people to really understand that breakthroughs are not only possible in your life, but they're actually plannable when you focus on controlling your controllables. The rest is up to God, but controlling your controllables. And there are three and we might have some fun talking about that when you really work on them, to master them, to play with them every day until they become something that is innate inside of you, that will transform your life and create more breakthroughs. The first is to shape your future. In other words, we're given vision, but we have to open our eyes to that vision to create alertness to possibility in our life. So how do you do that? That's part of what I teach and what I have passion for, is help people understand that your vision is actually a choice, what you focus on. I often ask this question, Ken. It's a straightforward, simple question, but it's a deep question. What are you focusing on? What are you focusing? How many of us focus more on worrying about what will go wrong than creating what we want to go right? How many of us focus more often and with more passion sometimes on the things that upset us and disturb us and anger us and scare us instead of the things that bring us joy? How many of us are focusing on the obstacles rather than the breakthroughs? Whichever way you focus, what you focus on is what you create. So the first step in that controlling the controllable is to start to condition your mind that as you start to focus on what you don't want, to ask more clearly, what do I want? That's step number one. That's the first controllable. Shape your future. It's all about vision. The second is to energize and engage your team. And to me, the team is everyone. I love that I have spoken to 1 million people over the last 35 years. And every single person, I believe, has within their capacity the opportunity, the choice to really develop their energy. That energy is a choice. And yet, Ken, so many people think about their energy the same way they think about the weather. It's like, gee, I hope I have enough energy to make it through this week. Hope I have enough energy to get through those 4 calls. But our energy is a choice. How we cultivate that energy is our choice. And to everyone we touch, our energy is our example. Anyone who meets Ken Primus knows immediately that this is a person who cares about me. And that's not something you say. It's something that shines through your energy, through your eyes, through your movement, through your expression. All right. So to everyone we touch, our energy is our example. So how do you cultivate a higher level of energy by choice instead of chance? That's the second of the three controllables. The third is the one that's all about service. The third is to build people, build teams, and build relationships. Anybody who's watching, whatever you do for a profession, we're all in exactly the same business. And that business is we're in the people business. It's how we grow and help others grow that determines how far we can go. But how do you build trust with people immediately? How do you help people know that they matter, that they're significant, that they're important? You know, the foundation of your podcast came from understanding that from a moment where you helped a person break through perhaps the greatest fear of all, that she wasn't worth living. And by doing that, you helped her, you built trust, you helped her understand that she had something to live for, that she was significant, that she was important. I believe our greatest job, and this is the core of service, our job is to help the people that we lead, that we care about, that we serve, that we love, to know they're important. Because when people feel important, they rise to an oh yeah spirit. And when people feel unimportant, they fall to a oh no spirit. But how do you do that? How do you help people know they're important when you're working through difficult times and difficult issues, when the journey is kind of bumpy? How do you help people know they're important when they know you so well you can't fake them out? You can't trick them. You have to be sincere and authentic. And how do you help people who are dealing with toughest times in their life know that they're significant? That's the third controllable, because there are certain things we can do to help people know they're significant. So when you do those three, when you focus on those three things that you control, what you focus on is what you create. So starting with your vision. Secondly, to energize and engage yourself and your team. And before you can energize anybody else, who must you energize and engage? Obviously, it starts on the inside and moves to the outside. And the third is to build people, teams, and relationships. When you do those three, you're going to start to create breakthrough results in your life. And breakthrough results are doing things when you woke up that day you didn't know you could do. Breakthrough results are getting in that great conversation with your teenager when for months that you just passed in the night, right? Breakthrough results are taking care of your health when you thought, oh, I can't do a thing about it. But the best part about breakthrough, what I call breakthrough leadership, focusing on those controllables, and everyone's a leader. I want everyone on your podcast to recognize you are the CEO of your own life, right? In other words, how you show up every day, that's a form of leadership. How do you deal with adversity, with challenge, with change, with prosperity? That's leadership. And most important of all, what kind of impact do you have on the people around you? Do you lift them up? You're already a leader, but I want to help people. My passion, my purpose, my service is to help people see themselves as breakthrough leaders. And when you focus on those three controllables, you start to generate more and more of these breakthroughs that just open your eyes to new possibility. Breakthrough leadership moves from the outside to the inside to who you become. And that's a model of personal excellence, integrity, accountability, and humility. And to me, the greatest of those qualities is actually humility. You know, Ken, some people have gotten in the wrong state of mind to think that being humble means you can't be confident. You can be very confident, very humble. Because being humble doesn't mean you think less of yourself. It means you think of yourself less. But the reason why humility is so crucial to breakthroughs is only those who are humble are lifelong learners. Because only those who are humble would rather make a mistake, do something wrong, and learn from it than to pretend they're always right. Only those who are humble are focused on their character rather than your reputation, because your character is who you are. Reputation, only what others think you are. My purpose, my passion, my journey is all about helping as many people as I can in this time that I'm in this body to believe in themselves, to break through their fears, obstacles, habits, or doubts, to live life with joy, because I believe joy is a choice. Right. And to understand that they are breakthrough leaders.
That is a powerful assignment to have. And I tell people, we did not come on this planet. I cannot believe that we all came here just to have jobs and then pass on. I think we all came here with purpose, with the design, and with something of quality to do as what you are doing. You'd mentioned so much stuff, so many truths in there. And I've been trying to educate people, Brian, that we are, first of all, you are a creator. You create. Every one of us, the life that you live today, you created it. And you talked about the focus of whatever you focus on, whatsoever man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Whatever your focus is on, you are creating it. You are calling energy because you're that powerful. You're bringing it together. You're bringing the circumstances. You're bringing the people together because you are commanding it. And because you are, it's going to do that until you understand that. And then you make a switch, a purposefully switch to say, okay, if that's the case, then I have the ability to create exactly what I want. And that is the case. You do have that. And don't be discouraged about it. Don't look at yourself less than or anyway, because you are that great. And once you become aware of it, usually that's when people begin to become that creator. Brian, one of the things that we do here at Threads of Alignment, because we want to get to become a little more familiar with you, you have given us this beautiful picture as to where your mission statement comes from. And so we wanted to see and learn what happened to you that caused you to develop this mission statement, if you will. One of the very first spaces that we visit when we come onto this planet is, besides the hospital, if we are born in a hospital, is that place that is called home. At home, we have a couple of folks there that are representative in the position of mom and dad, parents, you have siblings and so forth. And in this space, Brian, we're going to learn a couple of things, our modus operandi, if you will. We're going to learn about communication skills. We're going to learn how about our beliefs. We're going to start developing perspective about certain things right there. What was your family unit like?
Thank you. I love to speak about it. I came from my mother and father got married very young, and I had one sister who's a little bit older than I am. And growing up, I just, for whatever reason, I think I wanted to bring life into my family. My family was very focused on getting the job done. They were hardworking people, extremely hardworking people. I bless them every day for teaching me the path of loving what you do and working hard at it, having fun. Maybe playing hard is a good word. But I also had a dad, like many dads of my generation, who he lost his mother when he was 7 years old. And my uncle told me that when she passed away, it was almost as if he closed up. And so he had a really hard time expressing emotion. All the years I grew up, never once did I get a hug from my dad. Never once did my dad say, "I'm proud of you, son," or "I love you, son." At least not in a way that I could understand. And I often talk about something that I call an energy vampire. And an energy vampire, I talk a lot about energy and have fun with it. Every so often, somebody in my events will say, "Brian, I have a lot of energy, except when I get around him. I have this one person who kind of sucks the energy out of me. When I'm excited, they bring me back down. When I'm thinking of all the ways I can do it, they tell me all the ways I can't." And for many years, I thought my dad was my energy vampire. He just passed away at 94 years of age, just 2 months ago. For 14 years, when I went away to college, see, when I was a little kid, more than anything, I wanted my dad to approve of me, to be proud of me. But as I said, he just couldn't say it, and he just couldn't demonstrate it in a way that I could get it. 14 years when I went away to college until I kind of woke up. I had very little relationship with my parents because I thought they were my energy vampires. And then one day after I met my wife and we fell in love and got married, after we had our first child, I finally went to my wife after not seeing my parents for all those years and said, "Honey, as hard as it was for me to be around my parents when I was growing up, I don't want our children to never know their grandparents." So we went to visit them, but I did something that every one of your listeners can do if you have somebody in your life who sort of fits that model of your energy vampire. I made up my mind that when I would go see my parents for the first time, especially my dad, that I would be myself, that I would bring my authentic energy. See, I had always tried to be who I thought he wanted me to be, and I thought he wanted me to be like him, tough and quiet and strong. And that's just not me. I'm a goofball. I mean, I cry at the openings of supermarkets. I'm terrible. So we went to see my parents, and for the first time ever, I brought my own energy. I did not release my energy to that energy vampire. And one day, Ken, one day of living with my own energy, my life changed. And I realized for the first time how much I love my dad and how much he gave me. It was my dad who taught me work ethic. It was my dad who taught me about energy. It was my dad who taught me to do the right thing when nobody was looking. But I couldn't see it because I was so busy being bitter that I couldn't get better. And as I saw that, I got a bigger epiphany. I realized my dad had always told me he loved me. He just couldn't say it, and he just couldn't hug me. But for 17 years, he worked 2 jobs so we have enough. He couldn't say, "I'm proud of you, son," but he could get this old dilapidated bicycle and for 8 months go off to the garage in the tiny time he had and fix it so that on Christmas morning, there was my red racer bike. For the first time, my dad and I started to talk that day after 14 years of not speaking. And I found out all the years that I didn't think my dad even knew much less cared what I'd been doing in school and sports. He'd been telling all the other policemen he was a policeman. He just didn't want me to have a fat head. When my dad passed away, every single day I was with him at the end. The last words we said to each other was, "I love you, Dad, and I love you, son." And so what I learned from my dad was much more than work ethic, much more than energy. I learned that we all have different ways of expressing love and all have different ways of receiving love. And I learned that one of the most important things is probably the greatest gift I received from both my parents is to understand that our energy is our choice and that they taught me about energy. They were hardworking, wonderful people. Both of them were artists. I have absolutely no artistic abilities, but I still got some of that sense of possibility that I could learn to do things artistically in my life. And so that ended up being the path that took me to writing my books. My sister is a great soul. She has very severe Parkinson's disease, but she is a wonderful soul who spent her life as a counselor helping people work through very difficult issues. So she's a wonderful soul. So I got a great background. Plus I had incredible friends growing up and we talked about life, not just about where we were going that day.
That is awesome. What a powerful story, Brian, that you'd recollect. And it's important for people. One of the reasons why I go back there, this is the beginning of our beginnings, if you will. We began to formulate how we perceive, how we behave, things and all these different things that affect us. Our communication skills began there, and all of these things that come into play. We will usually go through some things that, again, later on in our journey, we will see the value of it as we get into our adulthood, if you will. Here's this young man moving in his life, and you're heading towards quote unquote adulthood. You're heading into college to decide to college, Brian, and the family is always involved in it, and you got to make a big decision. One of the biggest ones in our lives. We usually start there, compiled with all the other things. Which college did you pick, and why did you pick that field of study?
This is a funny story. So I had the joy, the privilege, the love, the honor to go to Stanford University. The funny part was that my parents were very hands off in my education. They expected it, but they never said a thing about it. And I was sort of as I said, I've been a bit of a goofball in my life. I only applied to one school. I had this vision that I loved Stanford. And it wasn't until I had applied and it was too late to apply anywhere else that it hit me that I might not get in because Stanford University was a very, very difficult school to get into. So one of the greatest days of my life was I was out in the front when the postman came and he had a thin letter. Now that did not seem very good to me. I thought that if I was accepted, I'd have a big package. But it said, "We are delighted to let you know that you've been accepted to Stanford University." And I breathed a great sigh of relief because if I hadn't got into Stanford, I don't know where I would have gone. I had gone to a local community college for a while because I didn't think to apply to other schools. So I spent 4 years at Stanford, had an incredible experience. I studied psychology, but I just love to learn. And so I was a bit of a Renaissance man. I realized as I went through Stanford that most students at Stanford were very directed towards a job. They were headed towards medical school, engineering school, business school. I just loved to learn everything. And so I took all kinds of study, and my major was about people, psychology. And I share with you one of the greatest courses I had because it's a really cool story. I had to take a developmental psychology to get my major. And so at
As one
Stanford,
who loves knowledge, let me ask you this. Let me interrupt and ask you this question. As one who loves knowledge, as you're gaining all this stuff, Brian, what was it doing to you? What impact was it having on you as you were gaining all of this knowledge, if you will, this information?
well, I think what it did most of all was it made me recognize that what I said earlier, that my fascination was people. What makes people tick? How do you inspire people? How do you help? What is it that's important to people to learn about people? Because psychology gave me a background there, wonderful foundation. You asked me the question about what all that learning was teaching me. It was teaching me that my path was to work with people. In fact, kind of a microcosm is that one course I took. It was called Observation of Children. And we had a little preschool on the campus of Stanford University. And the course was this. You went to the preschool, and for 11 weeks, once a week, you went for 4 hours and you watched one child. You observed everything they did. And I thought that that's going to be pretty boring after a while. Well, it was the most fascinating course I ever took. I knew more about that little girl after 11 weeks than I think anybody ever would. And it hit me. We rarely really observe one another for more than a minute. And it taught me that we have incredible gifts of alertness. I knew what inspired her. I knew what hurt her. I watched her
Mhm.
grow in the way that she communicated with the other children. She was 5 years old. And I wrote a 192-page paper about that little girl. And all was supposed to do was write a 10-page paper. I was that fascinated. I think the
Wow.
answer to your question is simply this. It taught me that people are my sweet spot, that understanding what helps people do what they do, and that we all have the capacity to grow, to break through, to transform. That's what I got from all that different learning, whether it was in English literature or psychology or studying different languages. All the things that I studied pointed towards working with people.
Yeah, because as we are moving through, Brian, and we're gaining knowledge, I mean, knowledge and has an effect on us. And that's why I'm fascinated with what it did to you, because it begins to change us in many ways, begins to inform us about behavior, all of these different things that added stuff does, and it bears fruit when we have the revelation, if you will, of the importance of the data and how we can utilize it as we move through in life. Because I've interviewed
Yeah.
people where they're like, yeah, it did nothing, and
Yeah.
then
And it
you have
helps us
those
see who
that
we are.
really became a student of learning.
Yeah, and it helps us understand who we are. And what I discovered was there were some people at Stanford who were
Yeah.
academically brilliant. I mean, academically so on such a high level that, I couldn't even understand them. But I learned that I could do it well, that I learned who I was. I wrote down this statement. It says, no one can be loved until they let themselves be seen. And no one can be seen until they learn to
Yeah.
like themselves. And what I did at Stanford was I came to understand that I liked who I was, that I was a person who cared about other people, that I also
Yeah.
had some abilities. I wasn't a genius as some of the Stanford University people were, but I had a perceptiveness about people, and that I felt confident that I could, if I put my heart into something, I could do a good job. So part of that learning about from others is to learn to know who you are.
Yes, I think it's the foundation, if you there's the fundamentals of it all, but it's the foundation of it when you know self. And you worked as a coach. I was reading some of your things and stuff like that. When you know who you are, you're able to then deposit stuff into those athletes and those other folks, whatever type of coach you are. But you have to have that in you first. It has to come from some place. And if it's there, one becomes very effective, and you learn about one of the most powerful journey I tell people, Brian, is to go into the self, because you're going to learn a couple of things there. You're going to learn honor, respect, the mind, thoughts, and how it affects your life, what you do with it, and when you are able to dance with all that knowledge for you, you're then able to assist someone else outside of their situation when they are lacking that knowledge, that information as to all of that. And as you begin to relay it to them, you can see the effect begins to happen in them. And I know you got a chance to witness that as a coach. I mean, probably some of the most powerful stories and lessons you probably learned from there. Talk to us briefly there, because I've been trying to educate my listeners. Every job that you will ever have, McDonald's, Burger King, I don't care, cleaning the toilets, I don't care what it is. Every job brings principles in your life that you will utilize within your journey. You may not think so, but I promise you it is. And don't despise where you are. That is the reason why I tell people about that. Don't despise where you are. Do it with kindness and love and honor, and learn as you're moving through. Talk to us briefly, Brian, about that space, because it is, I'm sure, as I said, impactful to you, but also to those kids that you're a part of in their life. Talk to us a little briefly.
Absolutely. The way I put myself through Stanford was that I taught and coached swimming in the summers, and I loved it. And so when my time came to graduate, my buddies thought I was crazy because they were going to medical school and law school and business school. And I'd been lucky enough to do well at Stanford, but I decided I'm going to do what I love. And what I loved was coaching. And so that's what I did. And I started a small swimming team in Southern California. When I had 15 little kids from ages of 7 to 9 years old. But over the next 8 years, that team was my life. And let me make a promise to every one of your incredible listeners. If anybody watching this show pours your whole heart and soul into anything for 8 years with what's really inside of you, pretty cool things will happen. And our little tiny team grew from 15 little kids to 8 years later, we were one of the largest private swimming teams in the world. And what I learned the most, what number one was that I didn't coach swimming. That was the little part of it. Physical technique. I coached people, and that everyone had their journey as an athlete and as a human being, that swimming was teaching them about life, not just about how to go faster in the pool. And that what I learned was that the worst thing that a coach can ever do is coach everybody exactly the same, because everybody is not exactly the same. Some people need a pat on the back. Some people need a kind word. Some people need tough love. Some people need space. And the joy, the opportunity as a coach is to look to discover what helps each person to grow the most and know that it can be different. You have an environment that is consistent so that you treat people fairly, but each person you look to see how you can best serve them to grow. So what I learned first and foremost was that I loved it, that I loved helping people grow and develop, and that no matter what you do, you coach people more than a sport or more than business. I also learned something important that caused me, the only reason that I left coaching after 8 years and loving every minute of it. And that was that outside of coaching, I had no life. I only knew myself as a coach. I didn't know who I was beyond coaching. And probably the only reason that I left coaching was because I wanted to discover who I was outside of my profession. I'm probably the only person Ken, who went to graduate school to get a life instead of a job. And I did. So the journey taught me what I loved, which was working with people. It taught me that I wanted to have life balance or life rhythm. I didn't want to only be my job. And I don't know that I could have discovered that in a better way, because I did something that I loved, and I knew that that wasn't all of me. It was just part of me. It was part of my job. It was part of what I did. But who I was more than just what I did.
And here you are now, Brian, you're taking all of this powerful knowledge heading into corporate world, because this is where all the stuff you're still carrying all this, but you had your training ground, if you will, and you began to learn about the approach of different people differently, and all those things that you noticed while you were there all began from an observation of a 5-year-old young girl. And so here you are in the corporate world now, because we're heading there, because this is where you kind of stumble into your calling, if you will, and into your assignment. And so again, here with the kids, and it started with this 5-year-old girl. And this is impressive what you learned and how you observe. And then you're walking through the coaching, and you hit corporate America now with all of this. When you got there into that new space, Brian, what was the initial entrance look like? What did it look like? Because usually it's not what it comes out to be. It's usually something else and whatever. And then we have a way where things are beginning to synchronize as we become more and more in tune with ourselves, purposeful in our approach. Then we begin to see that road begins to open up, and we see the glimpse, and we just walk right through in there. Talk to us about that journey right there, Brian, as you're moving through in that space once you landed, and then how it began to morph to where you are.
Yes, I love that. Nobody's really ever asked me that before, so I'm excited about answering that. My 2 years at graduate school were wonderful years. I got in great physical shape. I started running. I ended up doing marathons. I met my wife. I fell in love. I had a great summer internship up in the Seattle area, which I fell in love with. And so when I graduated from UCLA, I ended up getting offered a job by the company that had given me my internship. And it was in the field of transportation. And I came there with some of the things I brought along the way. Number one, enthusiasm. I believe anything was possible. And I was filled with enthusiasm to roll up my sleeves and get really tuned into my new professional corporate life. I climbed the ladder very fast. I ended up becoming a vice president of the company within 2 years. But I also had balance for the first time in my life. We gave birth to our first child, my daughter, Kelsey. My wife and I were madly in love with each other. We still are. We're going to celebrate our 40th anniversary this year. And I just thought the world is on a string. Life is great. I'm moving up. And then I discovered something that really changed everything. Number one, I realized I didn't love the industry I was in. If you put me in a dental office with 10 magazines and 9 of them were transportation, and one was anything else, I probably pick up the one anything else. I love the people in my company, and I love working with them, but I didn't love the field. It didn't fill me up as swimming had filled me up. And then I started, our
Yeah.
company, like many organizations, was siloed. Operations were really separated from sales. Sales, both of them separated from the home office. And that just made no
Mhm.
sense to me because I looked at life as a team sport. We influence each other through our energy. And so I talked the president of the company into letting, I was vice president, into letting me go out and do these team building seminars for our own company. And I loved it. It was putting together all I
Yeah.
loved about coaching. It was putting together all I loved about storytelling and interacting, getting people to do things rather than see. When we hear, we forget. When we see, we remember. When we do, we understand. And so I did these internal
Mhm.
seminars all across North America where we had offices all around. And we had an incredible turnaround that spring. What was a spring? This was a big springboard. Operations and sales came together as they never had before. We became an incredibly successful company. At the peak of this, I said to my wife, honey, we are doing great. Let's quit. I got to go do this. I got to go. I got to go teach team building. I got to go teach personal leadership
Yeah.
because that's who I am. And so that
Yeah.
5-year period in the corporate arena where I moved very fast taught me that we have a choice to do what we love. So many people get into a job and
Yeah.
think, I don't have a choice. You always have a choice. And when I
Yeah.
remember thinking to myself when I said at the peak of this, my salary would moved way up. We were doing great. The company was rocking. And I remember thinking, well, I'm standing on the end of a 10-meter diving board, 10-meter diving platform. I hope I'm going towards the water. All right. I hope that when I end up, I'm getting in the water. But I had this faith that when you do what you love with everything you've got, good things will happen. So that's how I became a
Yeah.
professional speaker. I dove off that 10-meter platform and God was with me because I had an incredible first couple of years. I had 2 companies that hired me, and I ended up speaking more than 100 times between those 2 companies. And it started to build kind of word of mouth. And so 35 years later, I'm still
Yeah.
loving every single minute. I joke about it, Ken. When I'm on stage, I am 25 years old. When I'm off stage, I get back to
But when
70
you
pretty quick. But on stage, I'm 25.
Yeah, because you're doing what you're called to do, and the energy that sustains you and make you feel like 25 is there when you step into that your calling. Because I know what that feels like when you stand there. You are absolutely connected. You feel the connection into everyone in that room. The energy that is in that room, you feel the presence when you stand there. And there's a degree of, in church and religion, they will say the anointing is there, if you will, because once you are in your gift, there is a certain power, there's a certain authority that one speaks, there's an authority that one moves, the energy, the language, the body language, all of it. And
Absolutely.
people recognize it, Brian. They look at you and they go, that boy's in his calling, because you have found your space. And you're absolutely right. And I tell people the job is the tool that they use to keep you from pursuing your dream, because that gives you a certain security. And in order for you to go and pursue your assignment, not so your dream, your assignment, it takes a degree of faith to do it. But you have to believe in your assignment to do that faith. You have to go, this is who I am, and
Absolutely.
I am nothing apart from it.
And that's the
And
key
that's your
thing.
job.
That's the key breakthrough that came for me that I want to share with you because you're right at it. I don't speak because of the audience. Now that sounds kind of strange. I love the audience. I
Yeah.
want every one of them to get something of value, but it's not the internal motivation. I don't do it for the money. I don't do it for what comes back. I do it because when I'm speaking, I'm connected to spirit. When I'm speaking, I'm who I really
Yeah.
am here to be, that I'm doing what I
Hmm.
love. When you do something for what you can get, it'll never be enough. All right. In other words, I do
Yeah.
receive things, but I don't do it for the purpose of receiving. I receive joy. I receive energy. I receive, but the internal motivation is because I'm doing what I was put on earth to do. And that's all I need.
Yeah.
And that's why,
Yeah.
for example, last week I spoke in Dallas and in Orlando 2 days in a row. Tomorrow I'm getting a new right hip. I didn't feel my hip at all when I was on stage. All right. I didn't feel it at all.
Yeah.
And on the second day, I was there speaking for 4 hours. 4 hours because I'm doing what I was put on earth to do. I was that 25-year-old who's just in the mode of delivering what God wants me to deliver. And that is, when you find that motivation, when you find that internal doing it for the right reason, for the reason that is, I'm here to serve. Service is love in action. I'm here because I'm doing what fills me up completely. Then it's almost magical. I know you know this, Ken. I was speaking in a room of 1,000 people, and it feels like God turns my head, points my eyes to somebody in the 33rd row who I've never met, but who I know what I'm about to say is what they were there to hear. I know it. I don't know where I know it. That can only come from the connection to what I'm doing here at this moment. But it happens every time when you're doing what you do out of that internal motivation to love to serve and to feel that you're doing what you're here to serve.
And that's I've been there, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it on the planet. There's nothing like it. I'm telling you, I've been there so many times and being a part of it. And once you are there, you want to be there, and that's what drives you. It's not all the money, that this and that. It's that connectiveness with God, with your calling, with who you are. And the power of that is intoxicating in so many different ways. And you get your strength. As you said, you feel young, you feel you're walking in your authority. This is what you were born for. And that's what you do. And it's great. On the onset of the interview, Brian, you went into the three main controllables, if you will. I want to go back to that. I want us to go back into it and remind those that are listening to us, because it is important. And if you can master these, if you will, one, in order for you to, Bruce Lee talks about, he's afraid of the man who practices one kick 1,000 times than the man who kicks kick you. He says, because he understood, if you become proficient with that thing, as you said in the onset, when you practice that and you become proficient, you will watch results happen in your life constantly. And this is where creation comes in. And so I want you to revisit that again and introduce us to those principles, because it is this is it, man, guys. And you guys that are listening to us, this is it. This is it. Your world is all over the place. I understand there's darkness around you. But what Brian is about to talk about will guide you to the light. And so that's why I wanted to bring him back and have him to reintroduce us to those tangible stuff that we can practice and put in our space today once you guys hear this thing. Go ahead, Brian.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Ken. I appreciate it. I love talking about it. Number one, the first controllable, and another word for controllable is choice. It's an area of your choice. It's an area where you get to choose what you're going to do in that area. And the first is to shape your future. And that's about vision and two foundational principles. Number one, we've talked about it, but we'll just put it succinctly. What you focus on is what you create. So to build a great life, to be the servant leader you're here to be, you want to condition your mind that as you focus on what you don't want, to focus more on what you do want. I'm called America's Breakthrough Speaker because I've had 1 million people break boards in my seminar. It's a metaphor of breaking through fears, obstacles, habits, or doubts. Everyone writes on the board something they want to break through: fear of failure, stress, worry, doubt, procrastination. On the other side of the board, they write down and envision. They shape their future. What's waiting for me when I have broken through? What am I going to do, be, feel, create, have in my life? Freedom, abundance, love, faith, hope. 95% of the breakthrough has nothing to do with your strength or coordination. As you break through this 1-inch thick wooden board, it has to do with your focus. If you focus on the board, you're going to get the board. You're going to go, whoa, that is a piece of wood. But if you focus beyond the board into your board holder's eyes, you'll astonish yourself with your breakthrough potential. And that is a beautiful metaphor for life. Are you focusing on the board or the breakthrough? So the first principle of breakthrough vision to shape your future, what you focus on is what you create. So condition your mind to switch when you're focused on what you don't want to what you do want. Second, stop using your memory to see. I've asked 1 million people in my seminars, what color is a yield sign? 99% say yellow. Well, yield signs became red and white 54 years ago. So we've seen thousands of these yield signs, and yet almost everyone says yellow. Why? Because we use our memory to see. Where does it matter the most? People. Change the way you look at people. The people you look at change. change the way you see yourself, the self you see will change. That's why I have people break boards, to see their breakthrough potential. So shape your future is about stop using your memory to see, and what you focus on is what you create, especially with people. Second, energize and engage your team, which means you must energize and engage yourself, that your energy is your choice. And we could spend a whole show on it, but I'll give you the three keys to building energy. One, movement. Your energy is created by the way that you move. In other words, anytime you've been your most creative, you've been your most dynamic, you've been your most understanding, you've moved your body differently than when you've not been your best in the same position. All right. So if you want to move your life, you got to move yourself. Elevate your movement 5% above what you've been doing, because that's just a comfort zone. And suddenly the world will seem different to you. So first step to elevating your energy is take charge of your movement. Second, much more powerful. And movement comes from it, something that you're all about. Your energies, the level of your energy is directly proportional to your level of purpose. When you're full of purpose, you're full of energy. When you do what you love to do, energy's no problem. So ask yourself every morning, very first thing, what am I truly grateful about today? That will focus you on your priorities. The priorities will lead you to your purpose. When you're full of purpose, you're full of energy. So the most powerful thing you can do in your life is to get clear about your purpose and to focus on it every day. Third, what we talked about with my dad, release the energy vampire, because you created him. I created that energy vampire. He wasn't real. All right. When I let go of that energy vampire, I found out all the gifts that he had given me. All right. When you do that on a 10-point energy scale, from 1 being comatose to 10 a child on Christmas morning, you're going to be above 9.0, and you'll be easy to impress and hard to offend. And that's a recipe for a wonderful life. The third is to build people, build teams, and build relationships. That's your choice. And the most important key of all, again, we could spend a whole show on it, is to be fully present. When you're fully present, 100% of your mind, body, and spirit is with the people you're with where they are now. And whenever you're fully present, you say to that person beyond words, you are important. You matter, you count. And whenever you're not present, you speak louder. My children, my daughters, when they were 8 and 3, one night came into my office when I could have been present with them, tucking them in, reading them a story. And they looked at me and they asked me, Daddy, do you love your phone more than you love us? I felt the blade go in deep. Emerson said, what you do screams so loudly I can't hear a word you're saying. And my daughters taught me that there's no greater gift I will ever give anyone, especially the people I love so dearly, than being present, because that's the only way I can build trust. It's the only way I can let them know they're significant and important. The past is history, the future a mystery, the gift is now. That's why we call it the present. So those three keys: shape your future, energize, engage your team, build people, teams, and relationships, but the foundation by being fully present. And you are going to create breakthrough results in your life.
That is the key. And I hope, guys, I hope everyone is listening to Brian. I mean, that is absolutely stuff. We're going to provide all of his links for you guys to get to him, so you can learn and get more deeper insight as to what he's talking about, and learn from him, because what he's talking about is the key. This is it. This is what they need to get some clarity about. So we're going to provide Brian's link so you can get to him, so that you can obtain that clarity that you need. Because as you begin to assimilate the information and really practice it, you have to learn all the nuances of it. As he begins to, once you get into a space and learn, you will see the manifestation. I promise you, I had to do the very same thing in my life, and it changed everything. And this is the beginning. Brian had mentioned my encounter with a friend of mine that I had talked to, and similar, these are the things that I had proposed to her, those changeables, Brian, and then those things that she had access in her space to be able to control and change her life. And so I'm telling you guys, this is the key. And we're going to provide all of his links. You got to get into Brian's space. Get everything as much as you can and learn and become free from where you're at. Brian, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. Man, this has been a good one. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. I loved every minute. I feel like we're kindred spirits, and it's been a joy and a privilege and an honor. And keep doing the great things that you're doing as a servant leader, that you are living as Mother Teresa said, who said, service is love in action. And it's not what we do, it's the love we put into the doing. And you ace both of.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I really do. And you have a good one.